Welcome to part two. Sorry about that. First of all, obviously this video is really long, but I watched 17 movies across multiple weeks to make it, so we're not going to rush it. Um, like somewhat of an amateur, I forgot to make sure I had enough room on my phone to make such a long video, but now I've cleared it out. Okay, anyway, we were talking about the Gamma 1 quadrilogy here. And as I was about to say, this movie is fun because it has a lot of bad special effects. When they shrink people, it's literally the equivalent of a Barbie doll. And they have no shame. They show the dolls. Um, they have laser guns. They're like actually handheld blowtorches. I'm not sure why they call them lasers. I don't think that anyone in America would have called a blowtorch a laser, even in the 60s. This is 1966, by the way. Anyway, there's so much silliness in this. Also, there's some these aliens like take human form because they didn't have enough money to like create aliens, but they decide to graft 2 extra arms onto some of them, and the 2 extra arms like don't work. Like, they can't grab anyone, they don't move, and most of the time they're underneath clothing. So you only see them like when the alien's shirts get torn off, I think, or like they can't move. Like there's no moving parts to these arms. Anyway, movie is not really very good. The dubbing is kind of bad. Anyway, the Hulk. Oh, this one featured multiple friendly faces, or faces we see in other Italian horror films of the early 70s, including Umberto Rajo, who showed up in the first two Dario Argento films. He was also in Long Hair of Death. He's in a bunch of these movies, but he's in this one, and so is the main guy from Black Day of the Ram, also known as the Fifth Chord, which we talked about not too long ago. He is just like an assistant to the main character in this. He actually had a bigger role in the second one, which was even worse, by the way. This one I'd give like a 4 out of 10. This is called the Daphnids Came from Mars. Well, that sounds cool because there's going to be Martians or aliens, but unfortunately, the Martians are just like green smoke superimposed on the sky. There's like no tangible enemy, and they like kind of possess people. This one was really boring. It was so boring that I decided I was not going to watch the third and fourth films, but then I watched the third one anyway. I just started it just to see how it started out, and there's a really good quality version of this because it was distributed by a different distributor. These two in America were distributed by MGM. And I guess MGM didn't feel like restoring and like re-releasing them in the modern times. But this one was put out by Fanfare. Fanfare is the same company that did Simon, King of the Witches. In Italy, it was released by some other small distributor. This one was released by Unidis, and this one was by, I think, Titanus. It doesn't say on there. But anyway, that one says Unidis, so this one was Titanus. Those are two large Italian distributors. Anyway, this one was a smaller one. I forget what the Italian distributor was, but in America it was Fanfare. They didn't even put out that many movies, but they put this out, and they put out Simon, King of the Witches, and some like motorcycle gang movies. Anyway, this one was cooler. Honestly, this might have been the best one out of all three. It didn't have as well known as of a cast, but they find what they think is an asteroid, and the asteroid has like an insane gravitational pull. So they go to investigate it, and they find out that what they thought is an asteroid, they land on it, and then they realized it's alive. It's a giant alien that's so big that it has its own gravitational pull, and through its own like strength or whatever, it has even more gravitational pull than a regular asteroid, which is already quite large. They go inside it. They have to like cut open its arteries. The whole thing is full of like jelly-like blood, and like some people drown in it. The end of this one was really cool. Once I go into that like planet-sized alien, it's pretty cool. Okay, let's keep it going. I did not watch the fourth one though. It wasn't readily available, and I just didn't care that much. Next, Antonio Margheriti's first giallo. It's called Nude, You Die. Quite a title. It's a very, very tame giallo, which is somewhat disappointing because he did such crazy horror films before, and then he gets into the giallo thing. But here's the thing, in the 60s, gialli were very tame. They didn't start getting crazy until The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, which came out 2 years after this. This is 1968. This is actually, I think it was made in late 67, released in 68. Basically, there's this all-girls school, and this guy goes around strangling people, strangling the girls in the school, and you think it's this person, you think it's this person. I give this one only a 5 out of 10, largely, first of all, because it's very tame, and second of all, because at the end, the killer, spoiler alert, the killer is not one of the characters that had previously been introduced. That's not how these are supposed to work. I mean, almost pretty much, yeah, every single giallo I've ever seen, the killer is one of the characters that you're familiar with, and it's usually a surprise. Well, in this one, you know, it's fun to try and guess who the killer is going to be. Well, you can't do that in this one because it's a person that you didn't know existed. It's a new character. So that annoys me. So anyway, not that good. Okay. There's a couple of spy movies that I didn't watch, and a couple of westerns that I didn't watch, and then I tried to watch this western, which is And God Said to Cain. It has Klaus Kinski in it, which is highly regarded as a good actor. He was in a few movies we talked about. Excuse me. He was in Jesus Franco's Dracula, as Renfield. And then he was in that movie where he was like in charge of that insane asylum, and where someone's going around and killing everyone with medieval weapons. He was in that. This movie, I watched like 45 minutes of it, and it was so boring. And I don't hate westerns either. I'm not anti-western. I don't watch every single one I come across, but I've seen some really good ones. This one was super boring, and Klaus Kinski has almost no lines in it. Also, similar to Barbara Steele, Klaus Kinski, a lot of people say he's a really good actor. He doesn't dub his own lines in any of the movies I've seen. I don't know if he dubbed his own lines in Dracula, maybe. But in the other ones, he doesn't, because he's German. And movie producers didn't want a German-sounding guy in American roles. He's supposed to be a cowboy. Like, they didn't let him dub his own lines. So, like, yeah, you can see him move around and, like, see his facial features and stuff like that, but he doesn't even barely... You don't hear his voice, and he barely talked in the first 45 minutes anyway. Okay, that one, no rating because I didn't finish it. All right, finally, In the Tight Grip of the Spider. Here's the American poster, Web of the Spider. So there's no spider in this. There are cobwebs, but there are no spiders. I think they called it that to make it sound like a giallo because that's what was popular at the time, but it's actually almost a shot-for-shot remake of Danse Macabre. I would say two things. First of all, well, more than two things, but two things that make this better than the original. One, it's in color, and that's what he originally wanted it to be. He didn't have the money the first time around. Two, the cast is better. Barbara Steele is really good, but this has Anthony Franciosa, who's actually an American. I think he's Italian-American. This is the lead actor in Dario Argento's film Tenebrae, which is an amazing giallo. That came out in like 1982, I think. This is 1971, so he's like significantly younger here. He had actually been getting large roles since the late 50s, if I'm not mistaken, and throughout the 60s, but not in horror films. This is his first horror film. He's really good in this. Dubs his own lines. He's great in it. He's the main character, the guy who has to spend the night in the castle. And Klaus Kinski plays Edgar Allan Poe, who's only in the beginning, but they give him like an extra scene where he's in this crypt opening up a grave, and he doesn't dub his own lines, but he like way overacts it, which I like. Like he is like writhing around, screaming, like spitting, like tearing open a grave with his bare hands. He like really earned his paycheck in this movie. So respect to Klaus Kinski. This is the first time where I'm seeing him where I'm like, oh yeah. And also Dracula, I actually didn't know who he was when I first saw that. That was the first thing I saw him in, so I'd probably have to re-watch that. He probably did a good job as Renfield, because Renfield's a crazy character anyway. So, no Barbara Steele, but those two guys are great. The color looks good, but there's one problem. I read this thing that Antonio Margheriti said that he didn't like the color version because it had less atmosphere. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not that it was in color. It's that in the original version was very dark, and they're holding candelabras for a lot of the movie, and it looks like the movie's lit by candlelight. This movie is very brightly lit the entire time, to the point where you can tell they're not really in a castle. The walls look like they are not castle walls, the interior walls. You can't really notice in the first version because it's so darkly lit. And in this one, it just looks like he's in a fancy house with a lot of old artifacts spread around it. Now, other than that, I have to say, this is kind of a pointless remake. This is also, for the record, the first horror remake of the 70s. There were none in 1970. I don't count Dracula because that was based off a book that was adapted many times. This is a remake of a movie. Danse Macabre was a film. It was not a book ever. And they remade it. So in my opinion, it's only a remake if it was a movie first and then it was a movie again. It's not a remake if it was a book first and then re-adapted. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. So anyway, this is the first horror remake of the 70s. And unfortunately, it's not different enough from the original, and it's not improved enough from the original to make it like worth existing. Now, if I was going to go back and watch one of these movies again, I would probably watch this one because it's in color and the acting is better, but it didn't need to be made. So I give it a 7 out of 10. Now, quickly, because this is like the longest video ever, if you're watching the 2 parts, I'm going to tell you some spoilers, so you can turn it off now. You can watch this on YouTube. You can watch the original version on Hoopla or YouTube for free. So anyway, the reason why there's a bet to see if you can make it all night in this place is because the place is full of blood-drinking ghosts. These ghosts return to life for one day of the year, November 2nd, every year, and they drink the blood of the guest who goes in, and then the guest gets added to the residency. So every year there are more ghosts in the castle. And there are a lot of cool characters, and you get to see how they were killed originally. So you see their like ghost origin stories, and then they manipulate and try to suck the blood, drink the blood of whoever's in there. So, very cool story. Not sure it needed to happen twice. It's too bad they didn't just make it this way the first time around. But that's okay. He wanted to try again, and there's some value to it because he got to do it in color the second time. It's a good movie. Also, because it was originally made in the 60s in the Hammer Gothic style, this kind of sticks out because it doesn't totally feel like a 1971 film. It feels like, actually, it feels like the other 1971 Hammer films, only without the violence. It's not that violent of a movie, really. There's some surprises. Cool characters. Overall, I would say it's pretty good. The other thing is, in the other one, the other movie from 1964, there's nudity, and there's not nudity in this one. But in both of them, there's a lot of sex, and there's some violence, and there's homosexuality in it. And for 1964, when Dance Macabre came out, I don't know too many other movies that were doing all that. Oh, another thing, I just remembered this right now, but the original version had a scene where they cut off the head of a live snake on camera and like watch it wiggle around. That was pretty crazy, and they didn't do that in the second version. Just realized that. They also took the nudity out, which is surprising because by 1971 you'd think they would leave that in there. Okay. Thank you if you stuck with the whole thing. The next few, I've looked into the future, the next few will not be this long. In fact, the next few were kind of isolated films where the director really didn't do much before. Directors. So we got a couple quick ones coming up in the near future. Thank you for everyone who watches these, and I'll see you next time.